beautiful woman suffered a terrible betrayal on her wedding day. Hours later, she did this. The morning sun bathed Amelia's room in a soft glow as she sat in front of her mirror, gazing at her reflection with wide eyes and a fluttering heart. Today was her wedding day, a day she had dreamed of since childhood, filled with all the small fantasies she had kept close over the years. Before I continue, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next fantastic stories. Everything was exactly as she had imagined. The gown, delicate lace and silk that flowed like water, her hair, styled softly around her face, and her eyes, bright with the thrill of the day. Today, she was about to marry the man she believed was her soulmate, a man who had once felt like the missing piece of her life. Outside her window, the early morning air was filled with the gentle sounds of guests arriving, mingling, laughter floating in from the garden where the ceremony would soon take place. The smell of fresh roses and lavender drifted in from the arrangements set up all around the venue, a breathtaking estate that her parents had rented for the special day. Amelia's friends, who had been by her side through every part of the planning, flitted in and out of the room, fussing over last-minute details and offering her words of love and encouragement. She looked around, filled with gratitude, knowing she was surrounded by the people who had supported her with unwavering loyalty. Her heart beat faster as she thought about Daniel, her fiancé, and all the moments they had shared leading up to this day. Their story had been almost storybook-like, a connection so natural and deep that it felt inevitable. They had met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's party, an instant spark lighting between them. Daniel had captivated her with his warm smile, his kindness, and a quiet charm that made her feel instantly at ease. Over time, she had discovered the depth of his thoughtfulness, the way he remembered even the smallest details about her, always making her feel loved and valued. As the months passed and they began planning their future together, Amelia had fallen even more deeply in love. She trusted him completely, confident that they were building a life on a foundation of love, honesty, and mutual respect. The little gestures he made, bringing her coffee on early mornings, surprising her with handwritten notes, listening to her dreams, only strengthened her faith in their bond. She couldn't wait to begin this new chapter of her life by his side, to grow and build together in all the ways she had imagined. Her thoughts were interrupted by her best friend, Clara, who entered the room holding a glass of sparkling water with a slice of lemon, Amelia's favorite. "Just a little something to keep you calm," Clara said with a wink, passing the glass to Amelia, who accepted it with a grateful smile. "You look incredible, Amelia. I've never seen you this happy." Amelia's cheeks flushed as she took a sip, feeling the cool, refreshing taste ease her nerves. "Thank you, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you," she murmured, taking her friend's hand and squeezing it gently. Clara smiled back, her eyes glistening with emotion. She had been there through every up and down, always cheering Amelia on, always reminding her of her worth. Today, Clara was as radiant as Amelia, her excitement and happiness for her friend spilling over. "I think I'm almost as excited as you are," Clara whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Today is everything you deserve, Amelia. You've been waiting for this, and I know you're going to have the most beautiful life." Amelia felt a surge of emotion as she looked at Clara, the depth of their friendship and the love she felt for her friend filling her heart. She remembered the endless late-night talks, the laughter, the tears, and the quiet understanding they shared. Clara had seen her through every chapter of her life, and she felt a deep gratitude for her friend's unwavering presence. "Thank you for everything, Clara," she whispered. "I feel like the luckiest person in the world to have you here." Moments later, Amelia's mother stepped into the room, her eyes filled with pride and joy. She walked over, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder, her gaze soft and full of love. "Amelia, my darling, you look beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Seeing you like this, on your wedding day, it's a dream come true for me too." Amelia smiled, blinking back tears as she looked at her mother, feeling the warmth of her love wrap around her like a soft blanket. The mother and daughter shared a quiet moment, their hearts brimming with unspoken words and years of memories. Amelia thought of the countless ways her mother had supported her, the strength she had shown through all of life's trials. Today was as much a testament to her mother's love as it was to her own happiness, and Amelia felt deeply grateful to have her by her side. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, leaning in for a hug. For everything. I wouldn't be here without you. As the time to start the ceremony drew closer, Amelia felt the anticipation in the air heighten. The excitement was palpable, the whispers and laughter of the guests outside growing louder. She stood, giving herself one last look in the mirror, and took a deep breath. Everything was in place. The stage was set for her happily ever after, and Amelia, surrounded by love and joy, felt as if her life was about to begin anew. The ceremony was only minutes away, and Amelia could feel her heart racing with a mix of nerves and excitement. The room buzzed with a quiet energy as friends and family gathered outside, their whispers and laughter drifting up to where she stood. She took a steadying breath, her hands smoothing over the soft fabric of her wedding dress, letting the moment sink in. Today was the culmination of every hope, every dream, and every promise she had carried in her heart. She felt as if she was standing at the edge of something magnificent, ready to leap into a future she had spent years dreaming of. Amelia's father entered the room, his face lighting up as he caught sight of her. His eyes shimmered with pride as he took in her appearance, and she could see that he was holding back tears. "My little girl," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You look absolutely breathtaking." He reached out, gently placing his hands on her shoulders. Amelia felt a warmth radiate through her. Her father had always been her rock, her steady presence, and seeing his pride filled her with even more confidence. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so glad you're here." They shared a quiet moment, the depth of their bond filling the room with an unspoken understanding. Her father had always been the silent hero in her life, supporting her every step, and she felt a swell of gratitude for the countless ways he had shown his love. "You're going to be so happy, Amelia," he said, his gaze steady. "I have no doubt about that." His words echoed in her heart, filling her with a newfound resolve. This was the start of something beautiful, a life built on love, trust, and the dreams she had always held close. Just then, Clara re-entered the room, her face glowing with excitement. "They're ready for you, Amelia," she said, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Are you ready to go get married?" Amelia looked back at her reflection one last time, taking in the sight of herself as a bride. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her, radiant, poised, filled with anticipation. She smiled, nodding to herself as she turned to her best friend. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with certainty. As she made her way down the grand staircase with her father at her side, Amelia's heart swelled with every step. The hallway was lined with flowers in soft hues of blush and ivory, their fragrance mingling with the warm, sweet scent of roses. She could hear the soft strains of the music beginning to play outside, signaling the start of the ceremony. Each note seemed to wrap around her, grounding her in the love that filled every corner of the estate. This was her day, and the world seemed to come alive just for her. When Amelia stepped outside, the scene before her took her breath away. The garden had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Delicate light strung overhead cast a golden glow, and the lush greenery was interwoven with flowers that bloomed in every shade of pink and white. Rows of chairs filled with loved ones stretched out before her, each guest turning to watch her with eyes filled with warmth and joy. She could feel their love radiating toward her, and for a moment, she was overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude for the life she had been given. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes met Daniel's, who stood at the end with a look of awe on his face. He was handsome and confident, his posture straight, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. She could see the promise of their future in his eyes, a life filled with laughter, dreams, and the quiet strength of a love that had grown over time. She felt a surge of affection as she took each step, her gaze never leaving his. This was the man she had chosen, the man who had chosen her, and in this moment, the world felt right. The ceremony began, and Amelia felt herself drawn into each word, each vow that bound them together. Her heart overflowed as they exchanged promises, words that seemed to echo in her soul. "I promise to stand by your side," Daniel said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Through every storm, every joy, every sorrow." His words wrapped around her, a reassurance that filled her with hope and certainty. She had found her person, her partner, and she could feel the power of their commitment settle deep within her. As she recited her own vows, Amelia's voice shook with emotion. "I promise to be your friend, your confidant, your home," she said softly, her gaze locked on Daniel's. "To walk with you, wherever life may take us." She saw a softness in his eyes, a gentle smile that reflected everything she was feeling. In that moment, she knew that they were connected by something greater, a bond that went beyond mere words. Their love felt like the culmination of everything she had dreamed of, a love that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. The ceremony ended with a burst of applause, cheers from friends and family who rose from their seats to celebrate their union. Amelia felt as if she were floating as they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, surrounded by the love and warmth of everyone who mattered to her. The joy in the air was palpable, a living, breathing presence that wrapped around her and made her feel as if the world itself was celebrating their love. As they entered the reception area, which was decorated with soft candlelight and floral arrangements, Amelia felt herself relax into the evening, grateful for the beauty of the moment. She knew the night would be filled with laughter, dancing, and joy shared with everyone she loved. Her heart swelled as she took in the scene around her, filled with gratitude for this life, this love, and the man by her side. Unbeknownst to her, the events of the evening would take an unexpected turn, a turn that would change everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and herself. But for now, she was blissfully unaware, lost in the magic of her perfect day. As the evening unfolded, the reception brimmed with joy. Amelia moved through the room, greeting friends, laughing with family, and feeling every bit the blissful bride she appeared to be. She and Daniel had danced their first dance together, a slow, tender waltz beneath the glow of twinkling lights. His hands held her gently, his gaze never wavering from hers. To everyone watching, they were the picture of happiness. But beneath Amelia's radiant smile, a growing unease simmered. In the brief pause she had taken in the dressing room earlier, she had picked up her phone, only to see a message that stopped her heart. It was a message from a friend, one she hadn't seen in years but who, apparently, had come to know something dark and disturbing. Her fingers had trembled as she read it, her heart sinking with each line. The words felt like shards of glass, tearing through the joy she'd been basking in all day. Daniel had been unfaithful. And the other woman? She was someone Amelia knew, someone among the very guests celebrating with them tonight. The pain of the revelation struck her with such force that she could barely breathe. But Amelia didn't confront him. Not yet. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. This was her wedding day, people were watching, and she couldn't bear the thought of the spectacle that might follow if she made a scene. She needed time to process, to let the betrayal sink in, and to decide what she wanted to do. Her stomach twisted in knots as she returned to the reception, her gaze carefully avoiding Daniel's. As she rejoined the guests, Amelia forced herself to smile, nodding along to the kind words and congratulations of friends and family. Yet, inside, her heart was breaking. Each time she glanced at Daniel, a flash of pain would flare within her, piercing her composure. She began to wonder how long this betrayal had been going on, how deeply her trust had been shattered without her even realizing. Her mind raced, but she forced herself to remain calm, unwilling to give away the storm brewing inside her. Daniel, sensing the subtle shift in her mood, gave her a curious look as he approached her by the dessert table. "Are you all right?" he asked, reaching out to take her hand. Amelia nodded, forcing a small smile as she glanced down, avoiding his gaze. "I'm just overwhelmed by everything, I think," she said softly, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. Daniel tilted his head, his brows furrowing slightly. She could tell he was picking up on her strange behavior, but he let it pass, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Throughout the evening, Amelia continued to interact with guests, smiling and laughing, though her joy was now a carefully crafted mask. She watched Daniel closely, noticing details that she had once overlooked, the way he avoided her gaze, the small moments of tension that flickered across his face whenever he saw her with certain guests. The betrayal weighed on her like a heavy stone, pressing down on every word, every smile she forced herself to give. But she was determined to keep her composure, not letting anyone see the devastation she felt. At one point, she caught sight of the woman, Megan, an old friend of Daniel's whom he had introduced to her early in their relationship. Megan laughed freely with other guests, her gaze occasionally drifting toward Daniel with a familiarity that now sent a chill through Amelia. She had thought of Megan as nothing more than a friend of Daniel's, a casual presence in their lives. Now, Amelia's chest tightened as she realized that Megan had been so much more to him, hidden in plain sight. As the night continued, Daniel grew increasingly concerned, glancing at her with a questioning look each time they crossed paths. His arm would find its way around her waist, his hand occasionally brushing hers, as if to reassure himself that everything was fine. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked again, his voice laced with concern as they stood together near the dance floor. Amelia simply nodded, her expression calm. "Yes, I'm just tired. It's been a long day," she replied, her voice quiet, but her eyes holding a coldness that he couldn't quite decipher. The night dragged on, each interaction feeling like a cruel reminder of the betrayal Amelia carried within her. She had thought this day would be filled with joy, a celebration of a love she had believed to be unbreakable. But now, each laugh and smile felt hollow, each well-wisher unknowingly cheering for a love that had already been tainted. She clung to her dignity, keeping her head high, but inside, she was barely holding herself together. When the night finally neared its end, Daniel pulled her aside, his face etched with concern. "Amelia, please, tell me what's wrong," he said, his voice a low murmur. She looked at him, her heart shattering anew at the sight of his face, the face she had once trusted so deeply. But she didn't let her pain show. Instead, she offered him a soft, unreadable smile. "It's nothing, Daniel," she replied, her tone steady. "I just need some time." Daniel's brows furrowed, a hint of worry flashing in his eyes. He searched her face as if hoping to find reassurance, but Amelia had become a closed book, her thoughts locked away behind a practiced calm. She allowed him to pull her close, his arms wrapping around her in what should have been a comforting embrace. But as she leaned into him, the warmth of his arms felt like a betrayal, his touch now laced with deceit she could no longer ignore. Inside, Amelia's resolve was growing. She didn't know exactly what she would do, but she knew one thing for certain: she would not be the naive, trusting woman he thought she was. As the last guests lingered, Amelia continued to wear her mask of calm. She moved gracefully through the room, nodding and smiling, though each glance at Daniel felt like a blade twisting deeper into her heart. Every laugh, every congratulations now felt hollow, a cruel irony mocking the love she had thought was real. She watched him interact with friends and family, charming and confident, the picture of a devoted husband. But in her eyes, he was a stranger. She realized that this man, someone she had trusted with her whole heart, had been hiding a betrayal that cut her deeper than words could express. At one point, Clara approached her, her best friend's eyes alight with happiness and pride. "Amelia, tonight has been absolutely magical," Clara said, squeezing Amelia's hands with warmth. "You and Daniel, you're perfect together." The words struck Amelia painfully, and for a brief moment, she felt her composure waver. She fought back the urge to tell Clara the truth, to let the pain pour out, but she bit her lip, forcing a smile instead. "Thank you, Clara," she managed, her voice steady. "I'm glad you're here." Clara's face softened, and she leaned in for a warm embrace. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Amelia," she whispered, her words both comforting and bittersweet. Amelia held her friend close, silently wondering if Clara, the person who had known her better than anyone, could sense that something was wrong. But Clara, swept up in the joy of the night, seemed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside Amelia. For that, Amelia was grateful. She wasn't ready to share this burden with anyone yet. As the evening continued, Daniel's concern grew, his eyes following her with a mixture of confusion and worry. He approached her again as the band played a soft, slow tune, reaching out his hand. "Dance with me," he murmured, his gaze searching hers. Amelia hesitated, her heart aching, but she couldn't refuse. She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor. She let him pull her close, his arms encircling her as they swayed to the music. But instead of the warmth she had once felt, all she could sense now was the weight of his betrayal. As they danced, Daniel lowered his head, his voice a soft murmur meant only for her ears. "You've been distant all evening. Please, Amelia, tell me what's going on," he pleaded, his tone filled with genuine concern. She looked up at him, her face calm and unreadable, masking the turmoil within. "I told you, Daniel. I'm just overwhelmed," she replied, her voice steady but her words laced with hidden meaning. He searched her eyes, clearly unconvinced, but she maintained her composure, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing her pain. They continued to sway in silence, the music filling the space between them. Amelia's mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions, hurt, anger, confusion, but above all, a fierce determination not to let him see her broken. She let her gaze drift over his shoulder, watching the guests around them laugh and celebrate, blissfully unaware of the fracture that had formed within her. She knew that she couldn't keep up this facade forever, but tonight, she would let him wonder. Let him feel the unease of not knowing what she was thinking. When the dance ended, Daniel kept her close, his grip tightening as though afraid she might slip away. "Please," he said softly, his voice tinged with desperation. "If something's wrong, I need to know. I want to help you." The irony of his words stung her, and for a moment, she almost laughed at the absurdity of it. He wanted to help her? She wondered if he had any idea of the pain he had caused, the devastation that lay hidden behind her calm exterior. But she only gave him a faint smile, her voice steady as she replied, "I appreciate that, Daniel. But right now, I just need a bit of space." Her words seemed to unsettle him, and she could see the flicker of worry in his eyes. He nodded slowly, loosening his hold on her as he took a step back, giving her a questioning look. Amelia watched him, feeling a strange satisfaction as she sensed his discomfort. Let him wonder, she thought. Let him question. She had no intention of giving him the reassurance he sought, not after the betrayal he had hidden so carefully. Tonight, he would have to live with the same uncertainty that now consumed her. As the evening finally drew to a close, the guests began to leave, each one offering their final congratulations and well wishes. Amelia bid them farewell, her voice warm but her heart distant, each goodbye a reminder of the reality she would face once the celebration ended. When the last of the guests had gone, she and Daniel were left alone in the empty hall, surrounded by the remnants of their perfect day. The silence between them was thick, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on them both. Daniel reached for her hand, his expression softening. "Let's go home, Amelia," he said gently, his voice filled with affection. But the word home felt foreign to her now, empty of the comfort it had once held. She pulled her hand away, giving him a small, unreadable smile. "I think I'll stay here a bit longer," she replied, her tone calm. "I just need a moment to myself." She saw the hurt flash across his face, but she stood firm, refusing to give him any more of herself tonight. He hesitated, looking as though he wanted to say something, but eventually he nodded, giving her a lingering look before turning to leave. Amelia watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness as his figure disappeared into the darkness. Alone at last, she let out a shaky breath, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. She had survived the evening, but the hardest part was yet to come. The silence enveloped Amelia as she stood alone in the softly lit ballroom, the remnants of her wedding celebration surrounding her. The faint fragrance of roses lingered in the air, mingling with the dim glow of fairy lights that still twinkled above, casting gentle shadows across the room. It was meant to be the night of her dreams, but now it felt more like a haunted memory. Her heart pounded heavily in her chest, each beat a reminder of the betrayal she carried within, a betrayal she was finally ready to confront. Just as she steadied herself, Daniel reappeared at the entrance of the ballroom, his silhouette framed by the glow from the hallway lights. He stopped when he saw her, his face a mix of relief and concern. Without saying a word, he walked toward her, his footsteps slow, hesitant. "Amelia," he murmured, reaching out as he drew closer. "You're still here. I thought you'd left." His voice was soft, filled with a vulnerability that, on any other day, might have melted her heart. But now, it felt hollow, like an echo of the trust she once had in him. She took a deep breath, gathering the strength to face him. "I needed a moment alone, Daniel," she replied, her voice steady yet laced with a sadness she could no longer hide. Her eyes held his gaze, and she saw a flicker of confusion cross his face as he registered the weight of her words, the cold edge that had slipped into her tone. He searched her face, a hint of panic creeping into his eyes. "Amelia, what's going on? You've been so distant all night. Please, just tell me." Amelia looked down, her fingers nervously tracing the lace on her gown, feeling the sharp sting of tears pressing at the edges of her resolve. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, but now that it was here, the words felt lodged in her throat. "Daniel," she began, her voice soft but steady. "Tonight, I found out something that shattered me." She looked up, meeting his eyes as her voice broke. "I found out about you." "About it?" Her words hung in the air, sharp and clear, slicing through the silence like a blade. His face paled instantly, his eyes widening in shock. For a split second, he looked like a stranger, his mask of confidence crumbling. "Amelia, what are you talking about?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. But she saw the truth in his eyes, the guilt he tried to hide, the shame that flickered just below the surface. She took a step back, her gaze unwavering, refusing to give him a chance to lie. "Don't," she whispered, her voice trembling with anger and sorrow. "Please, Daniel. Don't make this worse with more lies." A wave of silence fell between them, thick and heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. Daniel looked down, his shoulders sagging as he ran a hand through his hair, his face contorted with regret. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I never wanted to hurt you, Amelia. It just happened." His words felt like acid on her skin, each one a reminder of the betrayal he had kept hidden. She watched him, a mix of hurt and disbelief flooding her heart as she tried to process the reality of what he was saying. She shook her head slowly, her voice breaking. "How could you?" she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "How could you look me in the eyes, propose to me, plan this entire day, knowing what you'd done? Knowing there was someone else?" Her voice trembled with the weight of her pain, the betrayal cutting deeper than she had ever imagined. She had trusted him with her heart, her dreams, her life, and he had shattered that trust in the cruelest way. She looked away, unable to bear the sight of him, the man she had thought she knew. Daniel took a step closer, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself as though trying to protect what was left of her broken heart. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice thick with desperation. "It was a mistake, a horrible mistake. I never wanted this to happen." He reached out, but she shook her head, her eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and fury. "A mistake," she repeated, her voice filled with bitterness. "No, Daniel, this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is something you regret the moment it happens. You chose to betray me, to lie to me again and again." Her words hit him like a blow, and he took a step back, his face crumpling as he realized the depth of her hurt. "I love you, Amelia," he whispered, his voice choked. "I swear, I love you. You're the one I want to be with. That other thing, it meant nothing. Please, believe me." But his words felt empty, devoid of the meaning they once held. She had loved him with every fiber of her being, and now she saw that love had been built on nothing more than illusions and broken promises. Amelia closed her eyes, letting the pain wash over her like a wave. When she finally looked at him, her gaze was resolute, her voice calm despite the sorrow that lingered in her heart. "I don't know if I can ever believe you again," she said quietly. "Tonight, I was supposed to start my life with you, to build a future together. But now, I don't even know who you are." Her words were final, a truth she had been dreading but could no longer deny. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted, was gone, replaced by a stranger who had broken her heart. Daniel's face fell, his shoulders slumping as he realized the gravity of his actions. "Amelia, please," he begged, his voice filled with desperation. "Give me a chance to make this right. I'll do anything. I'll spend the rest of my life proving how much I love you." But she shook her head, her gaze unwavering. I think it's too late for that, Daniel, she replied softly. Some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals cut too deep. And with that, she turned away, leaving him standing alone in the empty ballroom, surrounded by the ruins of a love that could never be repaired. After the confrontation with Daniel, Amelia felt like a hollow shell, wandering aimlessly through the empty corridors of the estate. The evening had shifted from a celebration to a private heartbreak, leaving her caught between the person she thought she was, a hopeful bride, and the one she now felt reduced to, a woman whose trust had been shattered in an instant. Her elegant wedding gown, once a symbol of joy, now felt like a burden. She lifted the hem slightly, her bare feet brushing the cold floor as she walked away from the ballroom, seeking the quiet of the estate's small garden. She needed space, somewhere to breathe, to think. As she walked under the soft glow of the garden lanterns, she heard a voice call her name, a familiar voice that took her by surprise. She turned to see Liam, an old friend from her hometown, standing by the garden entrance. He was still dressed casually, in a simple but well-fitted suit, his face etched with concern. Liam had been one of her closest friends growing up, someone she had shared countless memories with. They had lost touch over the years, drifting apart as life took them in different directions. But here he was, his presence suddenly comforting in her moment of despair. Liam took a tentative step forward, his gaze soft as he searched her face. "Amelia, are you all right?" he asked gently, his tone filled with genuine care. She tried to smile, but the effort felt heavy, her face a mask of exhaustion. She could see in his eyes that he sensed something was wrong, something that went deeper than the usual wedding day jitters. Her throat tightened, and for a moment, she considered brushing it off, hiding her pain. But the familiarity of his presence, the kindness in his eyes, broke through her defenses. "No, Liam," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she lowered her gaze. I'm not all right." She felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, and she looked away, trying to keep her composure. But Liam stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her arm. "Amelia, whatever it is, you can tell me. You don't have to go through this alone," he said softly, his voice steady and warm. His words opened something within her, releasing the hurt she had been holding in. The weight of her heartbreak was too heavy to bear alone, and for the first time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. With a shaky breath, Amelia met his gaze, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Liam, I found out tonight that Daniel has been unfaithful," she admitted, her voice breaking as she finally let the truth slip free. "On our wedding day, of all days. I thought I knew him, but everything was a lie." The confession left her feeling raw, exposed, but Liam's expression remained calm, filled with empathy as he listened. He didn't flinch, didn't interrupt. He simply let her speak, his silence a balm for the ache in her heart. Liam's brow furrowed with quiet anger, his hands clenching slightly at his sides. "Amelia, I'm so sorry," he murmured, his voice thick with compassion. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his, and for the first time that evening, she felt a small, steadying comfort. "You didn't deserve that. No one deserves that, least of all you." His voice held a firmness, a certainty that reassured her in a way no one else's words could. She could see the protectiveness in his eyes, a fierceness that reminded her of the boy she had once known, the friend who had always stood by her. They walked slowly through the garden, Liam keeping his hand in hers, his presence grounding her in the midst of her turmoil. With him, she felt a sense of safety, a quiet acceptance that allowed her to let down her guard. He didn't ask questions or press for details, simply giving her space to breathe, to gather her thoughts. After a few moments, he spoke again, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Amelia, I wish I had been there for you sooner. I hate seeing you go through this alone." A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth as she looked up at him, the memories of their shared past flickering in her mind. "You've always been there for me, Liam," she replied softly. "Even now, after all these years, you're here, when I need someone the most." Her words held a depth of gratitude that she hadn't expressed in a long time. Liam had been her confidant, her protector, and seeing him here, on this painful night, felt like fate. It was as though life had brought him back to her precisely when she needed him. Liam squeezed her hand gently, his gaze steady and sincere. "I'd do anything to help you, Amelia," he said, his voice low. I know things have changed, that life took us in different directions. But you've always been important to me. If there's anything you need, anything at all, just say the word." His tone was filled with a quiet promise, a reassurance that he was here to support her, no matter the cost. In that moment, Amelia felt a flicker of warmth, a reminder that she wasn't alone, that someone still cared deeply for her. They continued to walk in silence, the garden's soft lights casting shadows that flickered with each step. For the first time that evening, Amelia felt a sense of calm. Her heart was still heavy with the betrayal she had uncovered, but in Liam's presence, the pain was somehow easier to bear. He was a reminder of who she was, of the life she had once lived before everything had become so complicated. And as they strolled beneath the trees, she felt the stirring of an old, forgotten comfort. As the night grew colder, Liam slipped off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. She looked up at him, surprised by the small, thoughtful gesture, and felt a pang of warmth in her chest. "Thank you, Liam," she murmured, her voice barely more than a whisper. His kindness, his simple, unassuming presence, had rekindled a sense of strength she had thought was lost. They stopped by a small bench in the corner of the garden, and she sat down, her heart feeling a little lighter. Liam settled beside her, his gaze focused on the distant lights of the estate. "If you need me here, Amelia, I'll stay as long as you want," he said, his voice steady and sincere. She looked at him, her heart filled with gratitude for his quiet loyalty, his willingness to be there for her without expecting anything in return. For the first time that night, she felt a glimmer of hope, a small but growing possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could find a way through this. And as she sat beside him, wrapped in his warmth, she realized that her story was far from over. After Daniel left her alone in the empty ballroom, Amelia took a deep, shuddering breath. The evening had spiraled into a painful nightmare, but she couldn't bring herself to leave just yet. She needed a moment to collect her thoughts, to feel anything but the ache that now filled her. She wandered to a quiet corner, away from the remnants of her own wedding celebration, and pulled her phone from her purse, her fingers hovering over the screen. She scrolled through her contacts, and her eyes landed on a familiar name, Liam. Liam had been her first crush, her closest friend growing up. They had spent countless summers together, sharing dreams, talking about their futures, even daring to imagine a life together someday. But life had taken them in different directions, and they hadn't seen each other in years. He lived across the country now, and their connection had faded to the occasional message or quick call on birthdays. Yet tonight, in the depth of her heartbreak, she felt drawn to him, a longing for the comfort of someone who had always understood her. With a shaky breath, Amelia sent a message, "Liam, are you awake?" She almost regretted it immediately, wondering if he would think it strange, if he even had time to respond. But within moments, her phone vibrated with a reply. "Amelia? Is everything all right?" His concern was evident, even through the screen, and Amelia felt a warmth spreading through her, a reminder of the kindness that had always defined him. She hesitated, her fingers trembling as she typed her reply. "No, Liam. It's not all right," she wrote, feeling the words pull at her heart as she typed. She paused, unsure of how much to say, but then added, "I don't think I've ever felt more lost." She held her breath, watching the screen as the small typing icon appeared. His response came quickly, steady and calming. "Amelia, I'm here. Tell me what happened." It was such a simple sentence, but in that moment, it felt like the lifeline she had been searching for. She took a deep breath, her thoughts racing as she began to share her heartbreak. "Liam, I just found out tonight that Daniel has been cheating on me. I found out on my wedding day." The words felt surreal, even as she typed them, but putting them down brought a strange sense of relief, as if speaking the truth could somehow lessen the weight of it. She watched the screen, her heart pounding, as she waited for his reply. She could imagine his face as he read her message, the way his brow would furrow, his jaw tightening with anger on her behalf. Moments later, his message appeared, "Amelia, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say. He doesn't deserve you. Not at all." The words struck her deeply, and she felt her eyes welling up with tears. In all the confusion and heartbreak of the evening, Liam's support felt like an anchor, grounding her in a moment of stability she desperately needed. She felt an overwhelming urge to tell him everything, To share the pain that had been swirling inside her since she'd made the discovery. He kept it hidden from me, Liam, she typed, her fingers moving quickly as she poured out her thoughts. I feel like I don't even know him, like I've been living in a dream that just turned into a nightmare. Her message sent, she waited, wondering if she was saying too much, but when his response arrived, her heart eased. You've done nothing wrong, Amelia. He's the one who lied, the one who threw away everything he had with you. You deserve someone who values you, someone who'd never hurt you like this. The sincerity of his words broke through her walls, and she felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had spent so much of the evening holding herself together, pretending to be okay, but here, with Liam's words lighting up her screen, she allowed herself to let go, to be vulnerable. She typed back, I thought he was my future, Liam. I thought this was the start of everything I'd been waiting for. I don't even know where to begin, how to face what's next. His reply was immediate, steadying her once again. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, Amelia. Just breathe. Take it one step at a time. And if you need someone, if you need me, I'll be there. Her heart tightened at his offer, the warmth of his words wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. She hadn't expected him to say that, to offer his presence so readily, and the thought of it brought her a strange comfort. She took a deep breath, letting his words sink in, a balm against the pain that had consumed her. She typed a response, hesitant but honest. Thank you, Liam. I can't even begin to tell you how much that means. Her fingers hovered over the screen, a question forming in her mind, but she held back, uncertain. She hadn't seen him in so long, hadn't thought he would still care this much. But tonight, he had shown her that some bonds never truly faded, no matter the time or distance. The screen lit up again. I'll always care, Amelia. I meant it. Just say the word, and I'll come get you. His message was simple, yet it held a promise she could feel in her bones. She looked around the empty ballroom, the silent remains of a celebration that had turned to ashes, and felt a sudden urge to leave, to escape this place with someone who genuinely cared for her. Maybe I will, she replied, her heart pounding at the thought. She didn't know exactly what she wanted, but she knew she needed to be somewhere else, somewhere where she could breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing down on her. Liam's reply came quickly, steady and certain. Whenever you're ready, Amelia. I'm just a call away. She stared at his message, a sense of calm washing over her. Tonight had shown her the darkness in the man she thought she would spend her life with. But it had also reminded her of a light she had long forgotten. A friend, a love, someone who was there, ready to hold her through the hardest night of her life. The hours stretched on, and as Amelia sat alone in the dimly lit corner of the empty ballroom, her phone felt like her only tether to reality. Liam's words had become a balm, each message helping to steady her as she unraveled the layers of shock and pain. She hadn't spoken to anyone else about what happened, keeping her heartbreak hidden beneath her composed exterior. But with Liam, she found herself releasing her emotions in fragments, feeling his presence through each reply. His understanding, his quiet strength, it was exactly what she needed. As the minutes ticked by, Liam continued to offer gentle words of encouragement, guiding her through the storm in her heart. I wish I were there with you, Amelia, he wrote, and she could almost hear the warmth in his voice, the same voice that had comforted her through her childhood heartbreaks and insecurities. Just knowing you're there on the other side of this screen is enough for me right now, she replied, her fingers typing slowly, feeling the weight of every word. A few moments later, Liam responded, and his message carried a tone that was tender yet confident. If you need to talk, Amelia, really talk, I'm here. We can take our time. You don't have to say everything tonight if you're not ready. She looked at the message, her chest tightening as she realized how much she had missed this feeling, this closeness, this understanding that went beyond words. It felt like stepping into a part of herself she hadn't visited in years. After a pause, Amelia found herself typing more than she intended, the words spilling out in a rush. I've been feeling so lost, Liam. I thought I knew him, thought I knew what my life would look like, but everything feels like it was built on lies. It's like I don't even recognize myself anymore. She hit send, a pang of vulnerability settling in as she awaited his response. Amelia, you're not lost, he replied gently. What you're feeling right now, it doesn't define you. This betrayal, It's not a reflection of who you are. You're still the same kind, strong person you've always been. His words filled her with a sense of reassurance, a reminder of the Amelia she had always been, even if she had lost sight of herself tonight. For the first time since the evening had taken its turn, she felt a flicker of strength return. "Thank you, Liam," she wrote, the words simple yet filled with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you tonight. You have no idea how much this means to me." Her phone pinged immediately with his reply. "I think I do," he answered. "I've missed talking to you, really talking. You've always mattered to me, Amelia. I think you know that." A warmth spread through her chest at his words, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Their conversation continued, a gentle rhythm of messages that made the pain in her heart feel more bearable. They began to share memories, stories of the past that had once brought them so close. She laughed softly as he reminded her of their adventures as kids, how they'd spent endless hours by the lake in the summer, talking about everything and nothing. She could almost see his smile through the screen, his familiar laugh that had once been her favorite sound. "I can't believe you remember that day at the lake," she replied with a smile, her heart lifting. "We must have been, what, 13? I still remember how you tried to catch that huge fish and ended up falling into the water instead." She could almost hear his chuckle in his response. "And I remember you trying to help me out but falling in right after. We spent the rest of the day soaked, covered in mud, and laughing like idiots." She laughed at the memory, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in hours. It was as if, in these quiet moments, she was reclaiming pieces of herself she had long forgotten. The memories wrapped around her like a warm embrace, and for a moment, the pain of the evening faded into the background. The conversation turned to their teenage years, their shared dreams, and the quiet promise they had once shared to never lose touch. "We drifted apart, didn't we?" she typed, feeling a pang of regret. "Life took us in different directions, but I think part of me always held on to those memories." "I did too," he replied. "And maybe life's funny that way. Sometimes, it takes us far apart just to bring us back together when we need it most." The words lingered in her mind, carrying a meaning she wasn't ready to explore fully yet, but they filled her with a quiet comfort. She realized that tonight, Liam's presence had brought her something she hadn't expected. A glimpse of hope, a reminder that there was still life beyond this heartbreak, a possibility of healing. As the night deepened, their messages slowed, both of them sinking into a peaceful silence. She found herself wishing he were truly here, not just through a screen, but sitting beside her. The feeling surprised her, but it felt right, natural even. "Liam, I don't know how to explain it," she typed slowly, "but talking to you tonight, it feels like something I've been needing for a long time. Like, you're helping me find my way back to myself." His response came quickly, filled with the same warmth she'd felt all evening. "Then let me keep doing that, Amelia. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, just say the word, and I'll come get you. No questions, no conditions. Just me, showing up for you." Her heart pounded at his words, and she felt a flicker of something new, a desire to leave the weight of her heartbreak behind and step into something different, something real. Maybe I'll take you up on that," she replied, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she felt a glimmer of possibility, a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in a long time. Tonight, she would let herself imagine a world outside of this heartbreak, a world where she wasn't bound by betrayal or lost dreams. And she knew, in her heart, that if she took that step, Liam would be there, ready to catch her when she was ready to fall. As dawn crept closer, Amelia found herself sitting by the open doors that led to the garden. She felt both exhausted and somehow lighter, as if pouring her heart out to Liam over those midnight messages had relieved her of some of the weight pressing on her chest. The garden was still and quiet, the soft glow of the lanterns casting gentle shadows across the flowers and winding paths. Her phone rested in her hands, and she glanced down at the most recent message from Liam, lingering on his words. "When you're ready, just say the word, and I'll come get you." She felt a warmth in her chest that had been missing for so long, a comfort that seemed to fill every empty corner of her heart. Liam was willing to be there for her without judgment or expectation, a constant presence she had forgotten she needed. She typed a message, hesitated, then hit send. "I don't know how to face everyone tomorrow, Liam. I feel so lost, so exposed. She bit her lip as she waited, her fingers trembling slightly, hoping he would respond quickly. A few moments later, her phone buzzed softly. You don't have to face this alone, Amelia. I mean it. This isn't the end of your story, it's just the end of a chapter. She felt her eyes well up as she read his words, feeling the strength he was offering her. He didn't belittle her pain, didn't try to rush her through it. Instead, he reminded her that there was a future beyond this heartbreak, a world outside of the betrayal that had torn through her life. Amelia took a deep breath and replied, "Thank you, Liam. I needed to hear that." She hesitated for a moment, then typed, "You know, part of me keeps wondering how things might have been different if we had stayed closer over the years. I know it sounds silly, but I feel like we lost something precious along the way." She sent the message before she could second-guess herself, letting the words settle between them. His reply came quickly, as if he had been waiting for her to say something like this. "I've thought about that too," he admitted. "Life took us in different directions, but there was always a part of me that missed you, that missed what we had. Maybe we were meant to find our way back when we both needed it most." The honesty in his words touched something deep within her, a sense of possibility that she hadn't dared to let herself feel before. It was as though, in a single night, they had uncovered something they'd both buried long ago. They continued talking, the messages flowing as easily as they had years ago when they were teenagers, sharing secrets beneath the stars. She told him about her fears, her shattered dreams, and he listened, steady as always, offering words of support without trying to fix her pain. She could almost hear his voice through his messages, the calm way he had of grounding her, of reminding her who she truly was beneath the heartbreak. Finally, Liam sent a message that made her heart skip. "Amelia, I know this might sound crazy, but if you want to leave, if you want to get away, even if just for a while, I can come get you. I'd drive through the night if it meant seeing you smile again." She held her breath as she read his words, her heart pounding with a strange mix of hope and fear. The idea of leaving, of stepping out of this place filled with memories of betrayal, felt both terrifying and freeing. She typed slowly, her fingers hesitant but determined. "Liam, I think I'd like that. I just don't know if I'm ready yet." She could hardly believe she was considering it, but the thought of seeing him, of being somewhere safe, far from the weight of this night, made her heart ache with longing. He replied almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting for her signal. "Take all the time you need, Amelia. I'm here whenever you're ready. No rush, no pressure." The comfort in his words wrapped around her, filling her with a courage she hadn't known she possessed. She found herself smiling softly, feeling the sting of her tears lessen as she imagined a world where she wasn't trapped in this heartbreak. Her phone buzzed again, and she saw another message from him. "You know, I'll never forget that summer we spent by the lake. Sometimes I think about it and wonder if it was one of the best times of my life." She felt her chest tighten as memories of that summer flooded back, the lazy days spent talking by the water, his laughter filling the air as they dared to dream of a world bigger than their small town. "It was one of mine too," she replied, her fingers typing without hesitation. "I remember thinking that, somehow, you were the one person who truly understood me." She hit send, her pulse quickening as she waited for his reply, wondering if he felt the same connection she did, even after all these years. His answer came swiftly, each word filled with a truth that felt almost tangible. "I still do, Amelia. I don't think that's ever changed." The simplicity of his words, the raw honesty, touched her deeply. It was as if the years apart had melted away, leaving only the bond they had once shared. In that moment, she realized that Liam had been there, in the background of her heart, even when she hadn't noticed. He was offering her not just comfort, but a way out, a way back to herself. As the night deepened, she felt a strange calm settle over her, a sense of clarity that she hadn't expected. She wasn't entirely sure what would come next, but she knew one thing for certain: Liam's presence had reignited a part of her that had long been dormant. She typed a final message for the night, her heart pounding as she sent it. "Maybe tomorrow, Liam. Maybe tomorrow I'll be ready to leave this all behind." The early morning light cast a soft, hazy glow over the garden as Amelia sat alone, her wedding dress crumpled slightly at the edges, a silent witness to the heartbreak and revelations of the night. The once vibrant celebration felt like a distant memory, its echoes fading as she grappled with what came next. Her mind kept drifting back to her conversation with Liam, each word he had sent her a lifeline in a night that had felt so dark. As the hours passed, Amelia found herself yearning for the escape he had offered, a place where she could breathe, free from the weight of betrayal that had shattered her wedding day. She turned her phone over in her hands, debating her next move, when a new message from Liam appeared on her screen. "Amelia, I don't want to rush you. But know that whenever you're ready, I'm here. You don't have to face this alone." His words were steady and warm, the reminder she needed to take her next step. She took a deep breath and replied, her heart pounding as she typed, "Liam, I think I want to leave. I can't stay here, not after everything. Would you really come get me?" Her thumb hesitated over the send button, but with a surge of determination, she pressed it. She waited, her nerves taut, until his reply flashed on her screen almost immediately. "Of course I would. Just tell me when, and I'll be there." She felt her chest tighten, the weight of her emotions blending with an unexpected sense of freedom. They exchanged a few more messages, making plans in quiet, careful detail. Liam told her he would leave right away, making the drive across the state to reach her by late afternoon. The knowledge that he was on his way gave her strength, the thought of seeing him a salve to the pain of the night. She imagined him pulling up to the estate, his familiar, comforting smile waiting for her. Just picturing it brought a flicker of hope, a reminder that she could leave this place and, in doing so, reclaim herself. As the day unfolded, Amelia moved through her preparations quietly. She took her time, slipping out of her wedding dress and changing into something simple, the soft fabric feeling like a small, comforting rebellion against the night's events. She gathered a few belongings, just enough to see her through a few days away from this world. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, each action bringing a sense of clarity to her fractured heart. This was her choice. This was her escape. A few hours later, as the afternoon light filtered through the estate's grand windows, Amelia found herself waiting at the front gate. Her heart was pounding, and her gaze stayed fixed on the road, her anticipation growing with each passing minute. She felt nervous, excited, and deeply relieved. She didn't know exactly what she would say when she saw Liam, but she knew that seeing him would bring her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She was ready to leave this place, ready to start anew. The sound of a car approaching broke the stillness, and Amelia's heart skipped as she saw a familiar figure behind the wheel. Liam's car slowed as it reached the gate, and he parked, stepping out with a warm, steadying smile that made her feel like everything might just be okay. He looked at her, his eyes filled with understanding and care, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The years of friendship, the memories, the unspoken connection, they all hung in the air between them. Liam approached her, his expression softening as he looked her over, clearly taking in the weight of what she had been through. "Amelia," he murmured, his voice low and full of warmth. "Are you ready?" She nodded, her heart steadying under his gaze. "Yes," she whispered, feeling a surge of relief flood her. "More ready than I've ever been." He held out his hand, and she took it without hesitation, letting him lead her to his car. As they settled inside, a calm silence filled the space between them, a shared understanding that words couldn't quite capture. Liam didn't ask questions, didn't press for details. He simply offered his presence, his quiet strength, and Amelia felt herself relaxing for the first time since the night before. She looked out the window as they pulled away, the estate fading into the distance, her past slipping away with it. As Liam's car wound down the long driveway, Amelia watched the grand estate gradually disappear in the rearview mirror, its towering walls and lavish gardens fading into the distance. With each passing mile, she felt a weight lift from her chest, the heavy remnants of the night's betrayal loosening their grip. Beside her, Liam's steady presence filled the car, a quiet reminder that she was no longer alone in her sorrow. For a while, they drove in silence, the rhythm of the road providing a soothing backdrop to Amelia's whirling thoughts. She was grateful for Liam's patience, the way he allowed her the space to process everything without pushing her to speak. The countryside unfolded around them, vast fields stretching under the afternoon sun, and for the first time in hours, she felt the tightness in her chest begin to ease. It was as if the open road itself was offering her a kind of freedom she hadn't realized she needed. After some time, Liam glanced over at her, his expression soft but watchful. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice gentle, as though he were wary of adding to her pain. Amelia took a deep breath, considering her words. "I feel relieved," she admitted, surprised by the truth in her own voice. "I thought leaving would be harder, but now, being here with you, it feels like the first right thing I've done in a long time." She gave him a small, grateful smile, and he nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "You've been through a lot, Amelia," he replied softly. "I can't imagine how hard this must be. But I want you to know that you're not defined by what happened. You're still you, the person who's been strong, compassionate, and brave all along. And you'll find your way through this, I know you will." His words touched her deeply, a reminder of the faith he had in her that hadn't wavered even after all these years. She looked at him, a sense of warmth spreading through her chest. Amelia sighed, her gaze drifting back to the landscape outside. "Thank you, Liam. For everything. For being here, for showing up without question." She paused, her voice thickening as she added, "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there to answer my messages. I felt so lost." Her voice trailed off, but Liam's hand moved over hers, grounding her with a quiet, steadying touch. "You don't have to thank me, Amelia. I'm here because I want to be. You've always meant something to me, and I'd drop anything to be here when you need me." Her heart beat a little faster, his words stirring something deep within her that she hadn't expected. She looked at him, her mind flickering to the past, the memories they had shared, the laughter, the dreams of a life that once seemed so simple and pure. Being with him again felt like reclaiming a part of herself she had lost, a reminder of the person she had been before everything became complicated. They stopped at a quiet, roadside cafe just outside of town, a small, rustic place with wooden tables and ivy climbing up the walls. Liam suggested they take a break, and Amelia welcomed the idea, stepping out of the car and breathing in the fresh air. They chose a table by the window, the warm sunlight streaming in, and ordered coffee. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the shared history that needed no explanation. As they sipped their drinks, Amelia felt herself beginning to open up. "You know, there were moments last night," she began slowly, her gaze focused on the swirl of her coffee, "when I thought maybe I could pretend, could go on with the wedding and ignore what I knew. But then I realized I couldn't spend my life like that, lying to myself." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with emotion. "I've always valued honesty so much. And to think that the one person I thought I'd build my life with could betray me in such a way, it made everything feel meaningless." Liam listened intently, his gaze steady and empathetic. "I can't imagine how painful that must have been," he said softly. "But I'm proud of you, Amelia. It takes strength to walk away, to choose yourself after something like that. And I'm glad you did." His words were gentle but filled with a conviction that reassured her, as though he had always known she was strong enough to do what was right, even when she had doubted herself. They continued talking, the conversation flowing easily between them. For the first time in a long time, Amelia felt truly seen, her pain validated but not allowed to consume her. They shared stories from the years they had spent apart. Liam talked about his travels, the work he loved, the things that made him come alive. And in turn, she shared her dreams, the goals she had set aside, the parts of herself she had tucked away in her commitment to a life with Daniel that, in hindsight, had only been an illusion. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they left the cafe, continuing their journey with a newfound sense of ease. Amelia felt lighter, her heart no longer weighed down by the pain she had carried alone. With Liam beside her, the future seemed less daunting, less shadowed by the betrayal she had suffered. She knew there was a long road ahead, that healing would take time, but for the first time, she felt as if she were on a path that was truly hers. They drove through the quiet, winding roads, a comfortable silence settling between them. The radio played softly, a familiar song from their youth, and Amelia felt herself relax into the rhythm of it, her worries fading with each passing mile. She glanced over at Liam, his profile outlined by the fading sunlight, and felt a surge of gratitude. He had come back into her life when she needed him most, offering her a chance to rediscover herself, to remember who she was beyond the heartbreak. As they continued on, the stars began to appear in the twilight sky, their soft glow casting a quiet beauty over the landscape. Amelia felt a sense of peace settling within her, a reminder that this was only the beginning of something new, a journey toward healing, toward reclaiming her life, and perhaps, a path back to the friendship and love she had once shared with Liam. In that moment, she didn't know exactly where the road would lead, but she knew she wasn't afraid. With Liam beside her, she felt ready to face whatever came next. And as they drove into the night, Amelia felt, for the first time in a long time, that she was finally heading home. As night deepened and the hum of the road surrounded them, Amelia found herself leaning against the car window, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in ages. The darkness outside was vast and quiet, dotted with stars that seemed to stretch endlessly above them. Liam kept his eyes on the road, one hand resting comfortably on the wheel, the other occasionally drumming softly to the rhythm of the quiet music playing on the radio. They hadn't spoken in a while, but the silence between them was soothing, filling her with a sense of peace she hadn't expected. Eventually, they passed a small clearing, a scenic overlook with a view of the hills that rolled beneath the stars. Liam slowed the car, glancing over at her with a gentle smile. "Want to stop for a bit?" he asked, his voice soft, understanding. She nodded, grateful for the thought, and they pulled off the road. He parked the car and turned off the engine, leaving them surrounded by the quiet of the night, the faint rustle of trees in the cool evening breeze. They stepped out of the car, and Amelia wrapped her arms around herself as she took in the vast, open view. She felt Liam's presence beside her, his calm strength radiating through the space between them. After a moment, he spoke, his voice carrying the warmth that had been her anchor throughout this difficult night. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he murmured, looking out over the hills. "It reminds me of those nights we'd sneak out to stargaze by the lake, just talking about the future and the lives we wanted." A nostalgic smile tugged at her lips. She remembered those nights vividly, the easy, open conversations, the dreams they'd shared as teenagers, believing that anything was possible. "We were so fearless back then," she said, her voice filled with a soft wistfulness. "We had no idea what life would throw at us, but we didn't care. Everything felt possible." She paused, glancing over at him. "I feel like I lost that somewhere along the way, like I became afraid to hope too much." Liam looked at her, his gaze steady and filled with understanding. "Maybe you just needed a reminder," he replied gently. "Life can be unpredictable, but you're still that same person, Amelia. You haven't lost that part of yourself, you've just been through a lot. You're still the Amelia I remember. Brave, kind, and strong." His words touched her deeply, his unwavering belief in her rekindling a spark she hadn't realized was still there. A comfortable silence settled between them as they stood side by side, their shoulders brushing. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of wildflowers and pine. She looked over at him, her heart stirring with emotions she had kept buried. "Thank you, Liam," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For being here, for coming all this way just to see me through this. I don't think I would have made it through last night if it hadn't been for you." He gave her a small, warm smile. "You don't have to thank me. I'd come for you anytime, anywhere." His voice was soft but filled with a sincerity that made her heart ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. The depth of his loyalty, his quiet presence, was a reminder of everything she had once cherished about him. She realized how deeply she had missed this part of herself, the part that could let someone in, could feel safe enough to be vulnerable. After a few moments, she spoke again, her voice trembling with the weight of her words. "You know, Liam, there was a time I thought we might have a future together. Back when we were kids, before life took us in different directions." She looked at him, her gaze uncertain but filled with longing. "I guess part of me always wondered what might have happened if we had stayed close." He turned to face her, his eyes filled with an emotion she hadn't seen before, something tender, something real. "I've thought about that too," he admitted quietly, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I never really stopped thinking about you, even after all these years. You were always there, in the back of my mind, this piece of me that I couldn't quite let go of." His words hung in the air, filled with a warmth that reached into the depths of her heart. She felt her breath catch, her pulse quickening as his gaze held hers. In that moment, the years of distance between them melted away, replaced by the feeling that they were exactly where they were meant to be. He reached out, taking her hand in his touch gentle but grounding. The connection between them felt electric, a quiet reminder of all the memories, dreams, and promises they had once shared. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, his voice steady. "But I do know that I want to be here for you, to help you rebuild, to be part of your life again." His hand tightened around hers, a silent vow that made her heart swell. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight, but I'm willing to walk this road with you, one step at a time. If you'll let me." Tears filled Amelia's eyes, but they were different from the ones she had shed before. These were tears of gratitude, of hope, of the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could find love again, not from someone who had betrayed her, but from someone who had been there all along, waiting quietly on the sidelines. She took a shaky breath, her voice soft but sure as she replied, "I'd like that, Liam. I'd like that more than anything." They stood together under the vast night sky, the stars shining down on them like silent witnesses to a promise renewed. In that quiet moment, Amelia felt the ache of the past begin to fade, replaced by a new beginning she hadn't dared to hope for. With Liam beside her, she knew she could face whatever came next, reclaiming the life she had once dreamed of, now filled with the promise of something even deeper, even truer. The drive continued into the night, the world around them dark and serene as Liam's car moved steadily down the winding roads. Amelia leaned back in her seat, watching the stars through the window, her heart feeling both full and calm in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. The events of the last 24 hours were still raw, but with Liam beside her, the pain felt softened, distant, a wound that, while still tender, was already beginning to heal. After a while, Liam pulled off the road into a small clearing, a quiet spot overlooking a peaceful lake surrounded by pine trees. He turned off the engine, the silence settling around them as they sat together under the blanket of night. Amelia could see the faint shimmer of the moonlight on the water, the scene reminding her of the nights they had spent together here years ago, back when life was simpler and the future felt boundless. This place had been their haven, and she felt a sense of rightness in returning here with him now. Liam looked over at her, a soft smile playing on his lips as he reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining gently with hers. "I thought we could use a stop here," he murmured. "It just felt right." Amelia nodded, her heart swelling as she took in the quiet beauty of their surroundings. She realized that this place, like Liam, had always been a part of her, a steady presence she could return to when life felt uncertain. The familiarity brought her a comfort she hadn't expected. They stepped out of the car, walking down to the edge of the lake where the water lapped softly against the shore. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and Amelia felt a peace settling over her, quieting the last remnants of pain. She turned to face Liam, his figure bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, and felt an overwhelming gratitude that he had come back into her life exactly when she needed him most. "I don't know how to thank you, Liam," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything, for coming here, for helping me remember who I am, for reminding me that I deserve more." Her voice trembled as she spoke, the weight of her gratitude mingling with the lingering sorrow she still carried. Liam's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, his hand reaching up to brush a stray tear from her cheek. "You don't have to thank me, Amelia," he replied gently, his voice steady. "Being here with you feels like something I was meant to do. Like all these years, I was just waiting for the moment we'd find each other again." He paused, his gaze searching hers with a vulnerability that made her heart ache. "If you'll let me, I want to keep being here for you. To be part of whatever comes next." A warmth spread through Amelia, a quiet but profound feeling that left her breathless. She realized that her heart, though bruised, was beginning to heal, ready to open again to a love that was genuine, patient, and true. "I'd like that, Liam," she said softly, her voice filled with a certainty she hadn't felt in a long time. "I want to be here with you, too. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you to be part of it." He smiled, his hand still resting gently on her cheek as he leaned forward, his face inches from hers. She felt her heart skip as he looked at her with a tenderness that spoke of years of unspoken words and shared memories. Slowly, he closed the distance between them, his lips brushing hers in a gentle, unhurried kiss. The world around them faded, and for a moment, there was only the warmth of his touch, the quiet strength of his presence. It was a kiss that held the promise of a new beginning, of a love that was deep and real. When they finally pulled back, Amelia felt a lightness in her chest, a sense of hope that had seemed impossible only a day before. She looked into Liam's eyes, seeing in them the future she had once dreamed of, a future filled with love and trust. With him, she felt like she was coming home to herself, reclaiming the dreams she had once put aside. Together, they sat by the lake, wrapped in the quiet, unspoken promise of the life they could build together. As dawn began to break, casting golden light over the water, Amelia rested her head on Liam's shoulder, watching as the world came alive around them. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, with moments of doubt and growth, but she felt ready to face it, knowing she was no longer alone. Liam's hand found hers, their fingers entwined, and she felt the strength of their bond, a love born of friendship, of understanding, and of second chances. In the gentle light of a new day, Amelia realized that she had not only found her way through the darkness, but had also rediscovered the joy of opening her heart again. And as she sat there with Liam, her soul felt whole, her heart ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, they watched the sun rise, each knowing that this was the beginning of a journey that would carry them forward, a journey of healing, love, and the promise of a future finally reclaimed. If you like this story, take the opportunity to see the others that are appearing on your screen right now. Subscribe to the channel and comment on what you thought of this story. See you soon. Bye.